In the early days of humanity, Indian Vedic texts described mythical beings with superhuman powers, prototypes of what could be called cyborgs in an Indian context.
Elsewhere in India is basically an audiovisual performance which is created at the intersection of obviously electronic music, AI generated art and video game engine based like world building. And the concept for it really came from other work that Murthy and me have been doing for the last several years, which is our own independent video game called Antariksha, set in colonial India in the late 1800s, but it's kind of telling a science fiction tale. Hi, my name is Avinash. I'm a visual artist and VJ based out of India. I'm currently in Goa, which is where we are right now, where I live and work out of. I've been practicing kind of visuals and digital art on the music scene for about 15 years now. And I've been collaborating with Murthy for about 8-9 years now. And a big focus of my work is on bridging Indian heritage with contemporary visual art forms and technologies and trying to find something that resonates with the younger generation.
My name is Murthovic, also known as Sri Murthy. I'm a music composer, sound designer, and I'm one half of Elsewhere in India with Avi. I currently work in video games and also work in the space of nightclubs, music festivals and museums and the contemporary art scene here in India. And I am currently working with Avi on an audiovisual show which is called Elsewhere in India, where we bring various different cultural practices and gamuts of Indian heritage and woven together a show which is an audiovisual show for mostly either a sit-down audience or a nightclub or festival kind of audience.
So Elsewhere in India is essentially an audiovisual performance set in the year 2079. It follows these characters inspired by both Murthy and me and a third who's a cyborg. And the three of us are in a sense in the year 2079 going around various Indian broken down lost cities, and we're trying to recover fragments of Indian heritage in old museums and private collections. So that's the kind of setting for the story, and the whole idea behind Elsewhere in India really has come from years of work that we've put in together and with other collaborators on our video game Antara. So the question which we posed to each other was, what can we do with Indian heritage that's really going to be cutting edge in terms of its presence in the club scene, but also in general makes use of like generative AI and all of these things in the last 1 or 2 years that have been coming in. So that's kind of what led to it. So we wrote a story, we slowly explored this kind of idea of our avatars as musicians and how we can create this narrative around it, and then one thing led to the other, and that's kind of how it built up. And the really interesting part about Elsewhere in India, which I think makes it unique on the club scene and this kind of context, is that we've been working with museums and archives quite a lot and trying to explore this concept of digital repatriation, which essentially means trying to work with museums and their collections to convert them into digital assets, and then trying to show how those digital assets can be used in many ways to either impart knowledge to new audiences or to create new economic opportunities for Indian museums or for Indian creators, as well as give museums, for example, in Australia and the UK who have interesting and significant Indian collections, give them new ways to think about their collection in the current age. So that connection between the physical world of archives and museums and the digital world of our game and our digital characters, and that's part of what makes Elsewhere super interesting for us and I think for the audiences as well. Our project depends a lot on collaborations with museums, but museums are also like slower institutions. It often takes a long time to get, permissions, and then I had helped them understand what we're trying to do and so on and so forth. So even though we've been trying to work with many museums and many conversations, are the things that have worked out significantly. One is that we worked with the Dakshin Chitra Museum in Chennai, which is one of India's foremost museums for Indian home architecture, and they have amazing objects and so on. So we worked with them for digitizing many of their objects from their archives.
At Elsewhere, it's been very interesting for us to sort of bring it from a video game practice that we've been working on for many years. As it is very well known that when you're making video games, there are very in-depth sort of lores and worlds that are created. Oftentimes some make it to the cut because of the play dynamics or other important factors that makes a game more playable. So there are a lot of things that are presented in a gist. So Elsewhere sort of gives us a room for playing with all the other visuals and other stories that Avi has created, while he's creating a certain very focused gameplay based world. But then there is a lot of interesting things that are part of that process, and it gave us a good opportunity as musicians also to go and work with folk musicians, and also work with like traditional tribal forest area musicians, and get in touch with things that are Indian but are also not so prevalent in the mainstream repertoire. So it's a great opportunity for us to sort of pick these different practices and bring them back into a digitized world, in some way keep them relevant in the current times, and also sort of leave a marker for the upcoming generations to sort of look at it as not the practice of rudimentary style, but also like a little more modern day approach to the practice, and benefit from creating that awareness. And also while we are creating that world, we are also benefiting from using it to tell our stories.
Asian art has always been, in some sense, very important to the world in shaping certain belief systems, and also providing a contrarian view to Western philosophy, Western kind of ideas of humanism, post-humanism, any of this, right? And it's obviously been very well documented in the ways of the West and the East, and obviously that has also led to a lot of stereotyping over the years, which is also unfortunate. But having said that, I would say that Asian contemporary art and its resurgence in today's world, and why it's become so important, whether it comes from China, whether it comes from Australia, anywhere in between, it has become important because it signifies a way of thinking that is diverging from what the last 30-40 years of American, European, globalized thinking have led us to believe in the arts and in society and in how you view the world, and also what life is about at the end of the day, right? I think we in Asia view life itself in a very different way. We see the act of breathing, I mean even the simplest acts of life, which are like just breathing, from that to the very meta ideas about what it means to be a human being, and how you use the arts and culture to relate, to express that relationship that you have with the cosmos, right? That is so divergent in Asia compared to what's happened in the West in a very fundamental way. But that had been forgotten with the years of colonization, right? That had been forgotten, and not just forgotten, it had been misrepresented to be the lower, the less developed, the less evolved. And I think Asian contemporary art has taken on, not just us, but I mean when we see our colleagues in China or Korea or like Taiwan or Thailand or Indonesia, Pakistan, like there's this Bangladesh, there's this amazing work happening by artists who have taken on that challenge to reverse that colonial process of degrading in some sense what is actually a very rich culture across these countries, and also shared culture. I think a lot of people in the current politics of India, Pakistan and all this kind of like nonsense, they forget that there is one culture that was shared for many millennia between all these countries before they existed as countries. And the people in these countries still, that's why Indonesia, they still read the Ramayana, but right, or anything else like that, right? That's why food and food tastes and palates have traveled between Hindus and Muslims and Christians and Jains, and the food that we eat today is a mix of like Mughal food and Tamil food and all of these things, right? So I think we forget that, and artists have taken on the responsibility, and contemporary Asian art signifies at least a return to that understanding. It's not about saying that East is West or West is West, but it's about resurrecting the balance that I think has been lost in the colonial years that we've all been through.